"We'll see who's staying where," my father declared. I called the police instead. 1 month later, a letter arrived in my mailbox. I never thought I'd have to call the police on my own parents, but there they were standing on my porch with a moving truck parked in my driveway refusing to leave. My father's face had turned that dangerous shade of purple I'd known since childhood. The one that meant trouble was coming. Mom was crying. Of course, she was crying. That was her go-to when things didn't go her way. "Ethan, you can't do this to us," she sobbed, clutching at my arm. "We're your parents." I looked down at her hand. Those familiar fingers that had both comforted and controlled me for 32 years. Then I gently removed it. My throat felt like sandpaper. My heart hammered against my ribs. "I already did." The officer approached with a clipboard. My father's face contorted with rage. "This is how you treat family," he shouted loud enough for the neighbors to hear. "After everything we've done for you." My mother collapsed dramatically onto the porch swing, sobbing about ungrateful children and having nowhere to go. The officers exchanged uncomfortable glances. "We've already tried staying with your brothers," my mother wailed. "You're our last hope, Ethan." The admission hung in the air between us, so I wasn't their first choice, just their last resort. When I still wouldn't budge, my father spat on my new welcome mat before finally walking away. "Welcome home to me." I should probably start at the beginning. That's what people do in these situations, right? Try to make sense of how everything went so terribly wrong. I'm the youngest of 3 boys. The afterthought. The mistake my mother occasionally admitted to after too many glasses of wine. The one whose name was still on a joint savings account she'd helped me open at 17 for emergencies, she'd said. "And so I can deposit money for you." She'd never deposited a cent, but I'd kept it active all these years. A small thread still connecting us. Not that they didn't love me, they did, in their way, but I was never quite like my brothers. Adam became a surgeon. Jake, an investment banker. Both married young. Both bought impressive houses in prestigious neighborhoods. I took longer to find my way, jumped between careers, rented a modest apartment that became the family joke every holiday. "Still paying someone else's mortgage, Ethan?" my father would ask, not really expecting an answer. The comments stung. They always did. But what my family didn't know, what I purposely kept from them, was that I'd been saving for years, living below my means while working my way up at a software company that eventually granted me stock options. I watched those options grow. I lived in that small apartment not because I had to, but because I chose to. It was my secret act of rebellion, my private victory. When I finally closed on my dream house, a renovated Craftsman with a view of the lake, I decided to surprise everyone. I sent out invitations for a housewarming party without revealing I was the owner. I still remember their faces when they realized my mother's hand flying to her mouth, my father freezing mid-sentence, my brothers exchanging confused glances. "You bought this?" Dad asked, his tone somewhere between disbelief and accusation. I nodded, took a sip of my champagne. "All cash offer, no mortgage." The silence that followed was the sweetest thing I'd ever tasted. For one perfect evening, I had turned the tables, become the successful son, the one they could brag about to their friends. I should have known it wouldn't last. A week later, they showed up unannounced with a moving truck with all their belongings. My mother brushed past me into the foyer directing the movers like she owned the place. "The master bedroom is upstairs," she told them. "My husband's golf clubs go in the garage." I stood there paralyzed, my brain struggling to process what was happening. "Mom, what are you doing?" She looked at me like I was being deliberately dense. "Moving in, of course. We sold the house last month, got a great offer. Couldn't refuse." My father clapped my shoulder as he walked by. "Don't worry, son. We'll pay for groceries." The ground beneath me seemed to shift. This couldn't be happening. "You sold your house without telling me, without asking if you could stay here." They exchanged a look I couldn't quite interpret. "We're your parents, Ethan," my mother said, as if that explained everything. "We figured you want to help us downsize." My father was already measuring the living room windows for his curtains. "Plus," he added, "it makes more sense for us to live here than for you to rattle around in this big place all alone." My chest tightened. My vision narrowed. They had assumed. They had always assumed that I would bend, that I would accommodate, that I would sacrifice my wants for theirs. Not this time. No. The word hung in the air between us, small but powerful. "You need to leave now." My mother's face crumpled. "But we sold our house. We have nowhere to go." "That's not my problem." "You should have asked first." My father's expression darkened. "Now you listen here, boy." "No. You listen. This is my house. I paid for it. I didn't invite you to live here, and I'm not going to. Call the buyers and tell them you need another week. Get a hotel. Stay with Adam or Jake. I don't care, but you're not staying here." I'd never spoken to them like that before. It felt terrifying, exhilarating. My father stormed past me to the door. I thought for one hopeful moment that they were leaving. Instead, he pulled out his phone. "I'm calling a locksmith. We'll see who's staying where." That's when I called the police. The next morning, my phone exploded with notifications, texts from extended family, voicemails from my brothers, Facebook messages from cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. Word had spread quickly. I was the ungrateful son who had thrown his elderly parents out on the street. Never mind that they were only in their early 60s. Never mind that they had sold their perfectly good house without a backup plan. Never mind that they had never once asked for my permission. I was the villain in their story. Adam's call came just as I was pouring my second cup of coffee. "What the hell is wrong with you?" he demanded, skipping any greeting. My hand trembled slightly as I set down the coffee pot. "Did they try to move in with you first?" A pause. "What, did they try to move in with you or Jake before showing up at my door?" Mom said something about trying to stay with my brothers. Another pause, longer this time. "Look," they asked. "All right, we said no. My house is already full with the kids, and Jake's renovating. But that's not the point." "It's exactly the point," I interrupted. "They didn't just ask you. They knew you'd say no. They assumed I'd be a pushover like always. They're our parents, Ethan. Then you take them in." He hung up. They all did eventually. I went to work, came home, tried to enjoy my new house despite the sour taste the whole situation had left. 3 days later, my banking app alerted me to a large withdrawal. $2,000 gone from a joint savings account I'd forgotten to close, one my mother had helped me set up when I was 17. I called her immediately. "I needed a new phone," she said as if it were the most reasonable thing in the world, "and some clothes. You know how stressful moving is." My blood pounded in my ears. "You took my money without asking." "Don't be so dramatic, Ethan. Family takes care of family." At that moment, something broke inside me. Something that had been bending for decades. "Keep it," I said quietly. "What?" "Keep the money. Consider it payment." "Payment for what?" My throat tightened, but I pushed the words out anyway. "For showing me exactly who you are." I hung up, blocked her number, blocked my father's, blocked my brother's, closed the joint account, opened a new one at a different bank. $2,000, that was the price of my freedom. Some might say it was expensive. I think I got a bargain. That night, I walked through my empty house, each room a testament to what I had built for myself, each quiet corner free from criticism and guilt and the crushing weight of never being enough. For the first time in my life, I felt at peace. My phone stayed silent. My doorbell didn't ring. I poured myself a glass of whiskey and sat on my back porch, watched the sunset paint the lake in shades of orange and pink. A message appeared on my phone, my colleague Ryan asking if I was okay. I'd been quiet at work, not myself. I stared at the screen for a long moment. Was I okay? I thought about the family photos I'd taken down from my walls, the childhood memories now tainted by adult revelations, the emptiness where obligation had once filled every crack. I typed back a single word, healing, because that's what this was, a painful necessary healing. The whiskey burned pleasantly on the way down. I had spent my entire life believing I needed their approval. Their love had always felt conditional based on how well I met their expectations, how thoroughly I fulfilled their needs. I thought buying this house would finally earn their respect. Instead, it just gave them something else to take. Tomorrow, I would wake up in my house, my sanctuary. I would go to work, talk to people who valued my contributions, come home to a space that reflected my choices. I would build a new kind of family, one based on mutual respect rather than obligation. The thought settled over me like a warm blanket. Sometimes the family you're born into isn't the family you belong with. Sometimes the truest act of self-love is walking away. I took another sip of whiskey, closed my eyes, breathed in the night air. For the first time in 32 years, I didn't feel the need to apologize for taking up space. My chest expanded. My shoulders relaxed. This was what freedom felt like. $2,000 worth every penny. A week passed. Then two. The silence from my family became its own kind of presence, a negative space outlining what had once been there. I threw myself into making the house truly mine, painted the walls colors my mother would have hated, hung art my father would have called pretentious, bought a ridiculously large TV and watched action movies at full volume because there was no one to complain about the noise. Each small act of autonomy felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. My coworker Ryan invited me to dinner with his family. His wife made lasagna. Their kids showed me their science projects. Nobody asked why I wasn't married yet or when I planned to have children or whether I'd gotten a promotion. It was just a normal dinner with normal people who seemed to like me for no particular reason. The contrast brought tears to my eyes in the bathroom afterward. I blamed the onions in the lasagna. 1 month after what I now called the moving truck incident, an envelope arrived in my mailbox. No return address. My name written in my mother's unmistakable handwriting. My heart raced as I turned it over in my hands. Part of me wanted to throw it away unopened. Protect the fragile peace I'd built, but curiosity won out. Inside was a check for $2,000 and a small note that read, "You're right. I should have asked." No apology. No acknowledgement of the larger issue. Just a repayment and the barest admission of one minor transgression. I stared at the check for a long time, then I tore it into tiny pieces and let them flutter into the recycling bin. Some debts can't be repaid with money. That evening, my brother Jake called from an unknown number. I almost hung up when I heard his voice. "Just hear me out," he said quickly. I should have ended the call, but some small hopeful part of me, the part that still remembered building forts with my brothers, the part that hadn't completely given up, kept me on the line. "Mom and Dad tried to move in with me again last week," he said. A startled laugh escaped me. "What again?" "Yeah, after the condo fell through. Showed up just like they did at your place. Said they were sure I wouldn't mind since I have the pool house sitting empty. Didn't mention they'd already tried with both of us before coming to you." Something between vindication and sadness washed over me. "What did you do?" "Told them no. Said they needed to get their own place." The line went quiet for a moment. "I should have backed you up from the beginning," he finally said. "I'm sorry." The words I'd waited decades to hear from someone in my family, an acknowledgement, an apology, it shouldn't have been enough after everything, but it was a start. "Thanks," I managed to say through the tightness in my throat. "Adam's still pissed at you," Jake added, "but he'll come around eventually." I wasn't so sure about that, and I wasn't sure I cared anymore. "And Mom and Dad," Jake sighed, "they found a condo. Dad's pretending he wanted to downsize all along. Mom keeps forgetting she has your number blocked." Typical. Some things never change. "I'm having a barbecue next weekend," Jake said after another pause. "If you want to come." No parents. Just me and Diane. The kids miss their uncle. My first instinct was to refuse to protect my newfound boundaries, but estrangement from my parents didn't have to mean losing everyone. "I'll think about it," I said. After we hung up, I walked through my quiet house again, ran my fingers along the walls, felt the solid foundation beneath my feet. This was still my space, my accomplishment, my refuge. Nothing and no one could take that away. I thought about family, the ones we're born into and the ones we choose, about how love shouldn't come with conditions or price tags, about how sometimes the hardest boundaries to set are the most important ones. I thought about forgiveness, not the kind that invites people back to hurt you again, but the kind that allows you to release the anger and move forward. My phone buzzed with a text from Ryan inviting me to a hiking trip that weekend. New friends, new connections, new possibilities. I texted back immediately. "I'm in." Then I added Jake's barbecue to my calendar, a tentative yes. This was just the beginning. To everyone who has ever felt like they had to earn their family's love, you don't. Love shouldn't cost you your peace or your boundaries or your self-respect. Sometimes the family you choose matters more than the family you're born into. And sometimes the most valuable thing money can buy is the courage to walk away. $2,000, the price of my peace, worth every penny. That night, I dreamed of my childhood home, not as it actually was filled with tension and expectations, but as I had always wished it could be. Warm, accepting, safe. I woke up with dampness on my pillow. Grief is a strange companion. It follows you even when what you've lost was never really there to begin with. The relationship I mourned had existed only in my hopes, not in reality. My phone pinged with a text from Ryan confirming our hiking plans. Another from Jake asking what sides I wanted at the barbecue. Small, normal interactions that carried no hidden agendas or emotional landmines. Was this what other people experienced all the time? I spent that Saturday planting a garden in my backyard, something I'd always wanted to do but never had space for in the apartment. My neighbor, a retired teacher named Gloria, saw me struggling with the tiller and came over to help. "My husband loved gardening," she said, showing me how to test the soil. I never got the hang of it until he was gone, then I had to learn. She didn't pry into my life or ask uncomfortable questions, just shared her knowledge and offered to bring over some tomato seedlings she'd started. "They always grow better than I can eat," she explained. Nice to have someone to share with. Simple kindness freely given, no strings attached. Later that week, I saw a therapist for the first time, not because I was broken, but because I wanted to stay whole, to understand the patterns so I wouldn't repeat them. "Family dynamics get into our bones," she said, "but that doesn't mean we can't reset them." We talked about healthy boundaries, about guilt and obligation, and the difference between being kind and being a doormat. I told her about the $2,000, about my mother's non-apology, about Jake's barbecue invitation. "What do you want from your relationship with your brothers going forward?" she asked. I had to think about that. What did I want? Not what had I settled for or what seemed possible, but what did I actually want? "Respect," I finally said. "Mutual respect." She nodded, wrote something down. "That's a good place to start." I went to Jake's barbecue, brought a salad and a six-pack of craft beer my father would have called pretentious, met Jake's new neighbors, played catch with his kids. It was okay, not perfect. A bit stilted at times, but okay. Jake made an effort, asked about my job, showed genuine interest in my answers. I barely know what you do, he admitted. Dad always just called it computer stuff. Dad was determined not to understand, I replied. It was easier to dismiss than to learn. Jake nodded slowly. He does that with a lot of things, a small acknowledgement of a larger truth. We didn't talk about our parents much after that. It was too raw, too complicated. But for the first time, I felt like Jake was actually seeing me, not just his little brother, not just the family failure, but me. Adam was another story. He sent a text after the barbecue. Heard you went to Jake's. Ready to apologize to Mom and Dad yet? I didn't respond. Some relationships need more time and space. Some might never heal, and that was okay too. The seasons changed. Summer faded into fall, the leaves around the lake turning brilliant shades of red and gold. I hosted a small Thanksgiving dinner. Ryan and his family, Gloria from next door, a few colleagues from work. No drama, no passive-aggressive comments about my life choices, just good food and better company. Someone asked about my family. I gave the simple answer, we're not close. No one pushed for more details. No one made me feel broken or strange for not participating in the traditional family gathering. In December, a Christmas card arrived from my parents as if nothing had happened, as if we'd been in contact all along. Inside was a gift card to a hardware store and a note, for your new house, Merry Christmas, love Mom and Dad. No mention of the moving truck incident. No acknowledgement of boundaries crossed or apologies owed. Just a flimsy paper bridge across a chasm too wide to cross. I set it aside, didn't throw it away, but didn't respond either. Maybe someday we'd find our way back to some kind of relationship, one with clear boundaries and mutual respect, one where my independence wasn't seen as a personal affront, or maybe not. Either way, I was no longer waiting for their approval to live my life. New Year's Eve, I stood on my dock watching fireworks reflect across the lake. The air was crisp, the sky clear and filled with stars. My phone buzzed with well wishes from friends, from Jake and his family, even a brief text from Adam that simply read, Happy New Year. Progress comes in small increments sometimes. I lifted my glass to the night sky, to the end of one year and the beginning of another, to freedom and boundaries and the courage to protect both, to the price of peace, whatever it might be, and the value of paying it, worth every penny.